The massive six-legged kragoth bursts through the dense jungle foliage of Xylox, its razor-sharp claws and venomous fangs poised to strike at Hope, a slender blue-skinned Orion female with iridescent scales. Her anti-gravity pack sputters and fails, sending her crashing into a clearing. The alien beast corners its prey, saliva dripping from its maw as it prepares for the kill. Hope's hearts race, her breath coming in short gasps as she faces what she believes to be her final moments. The kragoth's eyes lock onto her, its muscles tensing for the lethal pounce. In this moment of terror, Hope's mind flashes to her mission, a simple task to collect botanical samples for the Orion research outpost. Now, it seems, she'll become nothing more than another statistic in Xylox's unforgiving ecosystem. Suddenly, a figure emerges from the underbrush. Bruce Jenkins, a rugged human explorer and xenobiologist, steps into the clearing. His eyes quickly assess the situation, recognizing the kragoth's behavior as similar to Earth's large predators. Without hesitation, Bruce springs into action. Fashioning a makeshift tool from nearby flora, Bruce approaches the kragoth with a confidence that belies the danger. His movements are precise, calculated. He begins to vocalize, producing a series of low, soothing sounds that capture the creature's attention. Hope watches in disbelief as the human fearlessly faces down the kragoth. The beast's focus shifts from her to Bruce, its head tilting in curiosity at this new presence. Bruce maintains eye contact with the creature, his body language projecting calm authority. Minutes pass like hours as Bruce works his magic. The kragoth's aggressive stance gradually relaxes. Its breathing slows, and to Hope's amazement, the creature eventually lies down submissively. The immediate danger neutralized, Bruce turns his attention to the injured Orion. He approaches Hope cautiously, aware of the cultural divide between humans and Orions. "Are you all right?" he asks, his voice gentle but firm. Hope, overcome with a mix of gratitude and curiosity, allows Bruce to examine her wounds. She winces as he probes a particularly nasty gash on her arm. As Bruce tends to Hope's injuries using his field med kit, he explains his background. "I used to be an animal trainer back on Earth," he says, applying a sealant to her wound. "Now I'm here studying Xylox's fauna. Never thought those skills would come in handy quite like this." Hope nods, still processing the events. "I'm a junior scientist from the Orion outpost," she manages to say. "I was just supposed to collect plant samples. I never expected—" Their conversation is cut short by the arrival of an Orion search party. Commander Zorn, leading the group, eyes Bruce with unmistakable suspicion. "Step away from the human," he orders Hope, his hand moving to his weapon. Bruce tenses, sensing the shift in atmosphere. He stands slowly, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. Behind him, the kragoth stirs, responding to the sudden tension in the air. Bruce finds himself caught between two potential threats: the alien predator he's just tamed, and the hostile Orion search party. As Commander Zorn and his team advance, Bruce realizes he's walking a razor's edge. He must maintain control over the kragoth while simultaneously avoiding a confrontation with the Orions. The clearing, once a scene of mortal peril, now becomes the stage for a tense intergalactic standoff. Hope, caught between her rescuer and her own people, looks from Bruce to Commander Zorn and back again. The fate of this encounter, and possibly future human-Orion relations, hangs in the balance. Bruce takes a deep breath, preparing to navigate the most delicate situation of his career, with a docile alien predator at his back and suspicious armed Orions in front of him. Bruce's mind raced as he stood between the docile kragoth and the approaching Orion search party. The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. He knew one wrong move could shatter the fragile peace he had established with the alien predator. Suddenly, a low rumbling sound filled the clearing. Bruce felt it more than heard it, a vibration that seemed to resonate through his bones. The kragoth's massive body quivered, its 6 legs shifting restlessly. Bruce's eyes widened as he realized the creature was producing the sound, a call inaudible to both human and Orion ears. The effect was immediate. The dense jungle foliage rustled and parted, revealing a small herd of 6-legged, antelope-like creatures. Their sleek bodies gleamed in the dappled sunlight as they cautiously entered the clearing, drawn by the kragoth's call. Glyphons, Hope whispered, her voice a mix of awe and concern. Bruce's heart rate spiked. The situation had just become exponentially more complicated. He could feel the Kragoth tensing behind him, its predatory instincts awakening at the sight of its natural prey. In front of him, Commander Zorn and his team stood frozen, their weapons still trained on Bruce, but their eyes now darting between the human, the Kragoth, and the newly arrived Glyphons. Acting on instinct and years of experience, Bruce began to move. His movements were slow, deliberate, and precise. He positioned himself centrally, forming a living barrier between the Kragoth and the Glyphons. His hands moved in smooth, circular motions, his body language projecting calm authority to both predator and prey. "Easy now," he murmured, his voice low and soothing. "Everyone stay calm." To his relief, the Kragoth remained still, its earlier submission to Bruce overriding its hunting instincts. The Glyphons, sensing no immediate threat, began to relax, their large, luminous eyes blinking curiously at the strange gathering. Commander Zorn watched the scene unfold with growing amazement. His grip on his weapon loosened as he observed Bruce's uncanny ability to manage the complex ecosystem dynamics at play. Slowly, he lowered his weapon, signaling his team to do the same. "Stand down," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. As the tension in the clearing began to dissipate, Hope took the opportunity to examine her anti-gravity pack. Her fingers traced the scorched, indented casing, her face falling as she realized the extent of the damage. The power source was completely fried, leaving her effectively grounded on this dangerous planet. She looked up at Bruce, seeing him in a new light. This human, whom she had initially regarded with the typical Orion skepticism towards other species, had not only saved her life but was now masterfully handling a situation that could have easily spiraled into chaos. She found herself filled with a newfound respect and curiosity about him and his abilities. As Bruce continued to maintain the delicate balance between the various species, he noticed something extraordinary. The Kragoth's hide began to pulse with bioluminescent patterns, a mesmerizing display of light and color. Bruce's scientific mind kicked into overdrive as he recognized these patterns as a form of communication. Drawing on his extensive knowledge of xenobiology, Bruce began to mimic the patterns. His hands moved in intricate gestures, his body swaying slightly as he attempted to speak to the Kragoth in its own language. The effect was immediate and astonishing. The Kragoth's posture changed, its earlier aggression melting away completely. It cocked its head, regarding Bruce with what could only be described as curiosity. The Glyphons, sensing the shift in the predator's behavior, began to relax further. To everyone's amazement, they started to graze on the nearby vegetation, seemingly unconcerned by the presence of their natural predator. Commander Zorn could no longer contain his curiosity. He approached Bruce cautiously, his earlier suspicion replaced by grudging respect. "Human," he said, his voice gruff but no longer hostile. "I am Commander Zorn of the Orion Research Outpost. What exactly are you doing?" Bruce turned to face the Orion commander, careful to maintain his calming presence for the assembled creatures. "Commander," he replied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I'm Bruce Jenkins, xenobiologist. What you're seeing is a form of interspecies communication. The Kragoth uses bioluminescent patterns to express itself, and I've been attempting to mimic those patterns." Hope stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her earlier fear. "But how did you know how to interpret the patterns?" she asked, her eyes shining with fascination. Bruce smiled, grateful for the chance to explain. "It's similar to behaviors I've observed in other predatory species across different planets. The key is to recognize the underlying patterns of communication that exist in nature, regardless of the specific planet or ecosystem." As Bruce continued to share his insights, the atmosphere in the clearing underwent a remarkable transformation. The earlier hostility between humans and Orions gave way to a sense of shared wonder at the unprecedented scene before them. Predator and prey coexisted peacefully, while beings from 3 different species engaged in a scientific discourse. Commander Zorn listened intently, his earlier prejudices challenged by the humans' evident expertise. After a long moment of consideration, he made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. "Mr. Jenkins," he said, his tone formal but no longer unfriendly, "your skills and knowledge could be valuable to our research efforts on Xylox. I propose a collaboration under Orion's supervision, of course." Bruce's eyes lit up at the prospect. "I would be honored, Commander," he replied, barely containing his excitement at the research possibilities. Hope, still processing the events of the day, found herself volunteering before she could second-guess herself. "I can act as a liaison between Bruce and our outpost," she offered, her gaze flickering between Bruce and Commander Zorn. As the group prepared to leave the clearing, Bruce turned his attention back to the Kragoth. Using a combination of vocalizations and bioluminescent mimicry, he gently encouraged the creature to return to the jungle. The massive predator regarded Bruce for a long moment before slowly turning and disappearing into the dense foliage. The Glyphons, sensing the departure of their natural predator, began to disperse as well, melting back into the jungle as quietly as they had appeared. As Bruce watched them go, he felt a mix of exhilaration and anticipation. This encounter had opened up possibilities he had never dreamed of, not just for his research, but for interspecies relations as a whole. He turned to face his new Orion colleagues, ready to embark on what promised to be the most exciting chapter of his career. The jungle of Xylox seemed to pulse around them, teeming with secrets waiting to be uncovered. As the group set off towards the Orion outpost, Bruce couldn't help but wonder what other wonders this alien world held, and what groundbreaking discoveries lay ahead in this unprecedented collaboration between humans and Orions. Orions. As they set off towards the Orion outpost, the jungle seemed to close in around them, its alien beauty masking countless hidden dangers. The trek through Xylox's dense vegetation proved challenging from the start. Massive tree-like structures towered overhead, their purple-tinged leaves filtering the sunlight into an eerie violet haze. The ground beneath their feet was a treacherous mix of spongy moss and slick, root-like protrusions. Bruce found himself at the front of the group alongside Commander Zorn, his keen eyes scanning the unfamiliar terrain. As they pushed through a particularly thick patch of foliage, Bruce suddenly held up his hand, halting the group. "Wait," he said, his voice low but urgent. He pointed to a cluster of vibrant orange bulbs nestled among the undergrowth. "Those plants, they're similar to a species I studied on Epsilon 4, highly toxic. We need to go around." Commander Zorn's eyes narrowed, his gaze shifting from the plants to Bruce. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "Everyone, follow the human's lead," he ordered, his tone grudgingly respectful. As they navigated around the poisonous flora, Hope fell into step beside Bruce. "That was impressive," she said, her voice tinged with curiosity. "How many worlds have you studied?" Bruce smiled, carefully stepping over a tangle of writhing vines. "More than I can count," he replied. "Each one unique, but there are always patterns, if you know how to look." Their conversation was cut short as the group reached the edge of a steep ravine. The chasm stretched before them, a yawning gap in the jungle floor that disappeared into misty depths below. On the other side, they could see the path continuing towards the Orion outpost. Commander Zorn activated his anti-gravity pack, only to frown as it sputtered and died. "The magnetic interference is too strong here," he growled, frustration evident in his voice. Bruce surveyed the ravine, his mind racing. He noticed a series of sturdy, vine-like growths hanging from the trees on either side of the chasm. An idea began to form. "I think I can get us across," he said, already moving towards the nearest tree. "We'll need to gather those vines and some of the fallen logs. We can construct a bridge." The Orions watched with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity as Bruce directed the construction effort. Under his guidance, they wove the vines into sturdy ropes and lashed the logs together to form a makeshift span across the ravine. As the last knot was secured, Bruce stepped back to survey their work. "It's not pretty, but it'll hold," he announced. Commander Zorn eyed the bridge warily. "You're certain?" In response, Bruce strode confidently onto the construct. It swayed slightly under his weight, but held firm. He turned back to the group, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. "Coming?" One by one, the Orions crossed the ravine, their initial trepidation giving way to grudging admiration for the human's ingenuity. Hope was the last to cross, and as she reached the other side, she found herself looking at Bruce with newfound respect. The rest of the journey passed without major incident, though Bruce's expertise proved invaluable in identifying and avoiding several other hazardous plants and creatures. By the time they reached the outpost, even Commander Zorn seemed to have warmed slightly to the human's presence. The Orion Research Facility was a marvel of alien architecture, its sleek, curved structures seamlessly integrated with the surrounding jungle. As they approached the main entrance, a tall, stern-looking female Orion emerged to greet them. "Commander Zorn," she said, her gaze sharp as she surveyed the group. "I see you've brought company." "Dr. Zala," Zorn replied with a respectful nod. "This is Bruce Jenkins, a human xenobiologist. His assistance proved crucial during our mission." Dr. Zala's eyes narrowed as she regarded Bruce. "A human? In our outpost?" Her tone was icy. "Explain yourself, Commander." As Zorn recounted the events in the jungle, Bruce stood quietly, acutely aware of the scrutiny he was under. He could feel the weight of Dr. Zala's gaze, assessing him, judging his worth and potential threat. When Zorn finished his report, Dr. Zala was silent for a long moment. Finally, she spoke, her words carefully measured. "Very well, the human may have temporary access to our facility, but he will be monitored at all times." As they entered the outpost, Bruce couldn't help but marvel at the advanced technology surrounding them. Holographic displays flickered with data streams, while strange, organic-looking devices hummed with unknown purpose. Over the next few days, Bruce threw himself into his work, collaborating closely with Hope and Dr. Zala. He shared his knowledge of Earth's ecosystems, drawing parallels and highlighting differences with Xylox's unique biosphere. During one late-night research session, as Bruce and Hope pored over data from the Kragoth encounter, something caught Bruce's eye. He leaned in closer to the holographic display, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Hope, look at this," he said, excitement creeping into his voice. "The Kragoth's bioluminescent patterns. They're not random. There's a correlation with the planet's magnetic field fluctuations." Hope's eyes widened as she saw what Bruce was pointing out. "You're right," she breathed. "This could change everything we thought we knew about interspecies communication on Xylox." As they delved deeper into their discovery, neither of them noticed Commander Zorn watching from the shadows, his expression unreadable as he observed their growing closeness and the potential impact of their work. Outside the outpost, unbeknownst to its occupants, a human ship descended through Xylox's atmosphere. On board, Dr. Marcus Steele smiled coldly as he prepared to claim the fruits of Bruce's labor for himself, setting the stage for a confrontation that would test the fragile alliance between humans and Orions to its very limits. The tension in the air was palpable as Dr. Marcus Steele's ship touched down near the Orion research outpost. Bruce watched from a window, his earlier excitement giving way to a growing sense of unease. He knew Steele's reputation for ruthless ambition, and the timing of his arrival was far from coincidental. As Steele and his team disembarked, Commander Zorn approached Bruce, his expression grim. "Your people have arrived, human," he said, his tone cautious. "I hope this doesn't complicate matters." Bruce nodded, his mind focused. "I'll handle it, Commander. Our work here is too important to let personal agendas interfere." The following days were a whirlwind of tense meetings and barely concealed power plays. Steele wasted no time in asserting his authority, demanding access to all research data, and pushing for control over future expeditions. Bruce found himself constantly on the defensive, struggling to protect the delicate balance he'd established with the Orions. During a particularly heated debate over research priorities, Bruce made a bold proposal. "We need to go to the Crimson Expanse," he announced, silencing the room. "It's the key to understanding the Kragoths and their connection to this planet's unique properties." Steele scoffed. "The Crimson Expanse? That's suicide. No one's ever returned from there." "Exactly," Bruce countered. "Which is why it's our best chance at a breakthrough. The largest concentration of Kragoths on the planet in their natural habitat. We could unlock the secrets of their bioluminescent communication and its link to the magnetic field. Commander Zorn, who had been listening silently, spoke up. "It's risky, but the potential rewards. I'll lead the expedition myself." Steele's eyes narrowed. "My team will join you, of course. We can't let this opportunity slip away." As preparations for the expedition began, Bruce found himself working closely with Hope. Their shared excitement over the upcoming journey brought them closer, their conversations stretching long into the night as they pored over maps and data. The day of departure arrived with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The team assembled at the edge of the outpost, their gear checked and double-checked. Commander Zorn gave final instructions, his gaze lingering on Bruce and Hope. "Stay close," he warned. "The Crimson Expanse is unlike anything you've encountered before." As they ventured deeper into the unexplored territory, the landscape began to change. The lush purple foliage gave way to crimson vegetation that seemed to pulse with an inner light. The air grew thick and humid, filled with strange, chittering sounds. Their equipment began to malfunction almost immediately. Compasses spun wildly, and communication devices emitted only static. Bruce found himself relying more and more on his instincts, with Hope's knowledge of local flora proving invaluable. On the third day of their trek, they encountered their first major obstacle. A vast chasm stretched before them, its depths obscured by swirling, crimson mist. The group halted, searching for a way across. Bruce spotted a series of bioluminescent fungi growing along the chasm walls. "Those could be our bridge," he said, pointing. "If we can stimulate them to grow, they might form a path across." Hope nodded, already reaching for her pack. "I have some biochemical compounds that might work, but it's risky. We don't know how these fungi will react." As they worked to create a bridge, Steele grew increasingly agitated. "This is taking too long," he snapped. "We're losing valuable research time." Commander Zorn silenced him with a look. "Patience, Dr. Steele. Rushing in the Crimson Expanse is a death sentence." Finally, after hours of careful work, a glowing path stretched across the chasm. Bruce took the lead, testing each step carefully. The fungi held, pulsing with an eerie light as they crossed. As they reached the other side, a bone-chilling roar echoed through the air. The group froze, instinctively huddling together. From the crimson underbrush, a massive Kragoth emerged, its scales shimmering with complex patterns of light. Bruce's heart raced as he recognized the creature's aggressive posture. Without thinking, he stepped forward, his hands raised. Drawing on his previous experience, he began to mimic the Kragoth's bioluminescent patterns, adding soft vocalizations that echoed the creature's low growls. The effect was immediate. The Kragoth's hostile stance relaxed, its head tilting in curiosity. Bruce continued his communication, slowly guiding the creature away from the group. As the Kragoth retreated into the undergrowth, Bruce turned to find the entire expedition staring at him in awe. Hope's eyes shone with admiration, while Commander Zorn nodded grudgingly. Steele, however, looked furious. "How did you do that?" he demanded. "You've been holding out on us, Jenkins." Before Bruce could respond, Hope interjected. "It's not about holding out, Dr. Steele. It's about understanding and respect. Bruce has been studying these creatures, building a relationship with them." The group pressed on, the incident with the Kragoth having shifted the dynamics of the expedition. Bruce found himself taking a more central role, with even the Orions deferring to his expertise in navigating the alien terrain. As they ventured deeper into the Crimson Expanse, the frequency of Kragoth encounters increased. Bruce's ability to communicate with the creatures became crucial to their survival, allowing them to pass through territories that would have otherwise been impenetrable. On the seventh day of their journey, they stumbled upon a sight that took their breath away. A vast clearing stretched before them, filled with hundreds of Kragoths. The creatures moved in complex patterns, their bioluminescent scales creating a mesmerizing display that lit up the crimson sky. "It's a nesting ground," Bruce whispered, his voice filled with awe. "This is it. This is what we've been looking for." As the team set up their equipment, Bruce noticed Steele watching the Kragoths with an unsettling intensity. He made a mental note to keep a close eye on the ambitious scientist. Little did Bruce know that Steele's actions in the coming hours would not only jeopardize the expedition, but also forced Bruce to confront his growing feelings for hope in the face of mortal danger. Danger. Bruce's heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation unfolding before them. "We need to investigate those energy readings," Bruce whispered to Hope, gesturing towards a dark opening in the crimson rock face. "It might be our best chance to understand what's really happening here." Hope nodded, her eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Agreed. Let's go before Steele notices we're gone." They slipped away from the main group, their footsteps muffled by the spongy crimson vegetation. As they approached the cave entrance, their handheld scanners began to emit a soft, pulsing beep. "These readings are off the charts," Hope murmured, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I've never seen anything like this before." Bruce felt a shiver run down his spine as they stepped into the cool darkness of the cave. The walls seemed to shimmer with a faint, otherworldly glow that reminded him of the Kragoth's bioluminescent patterns. As they ventured deeper, the cave opened up into a vast chamber. Bruce's jaw dropped as he took in the sight before them. An enormous structure, clearly artificial and alien in design, dominated the cavern. Its sleek, curved surfaces were covered in intricate, glowing patterns that pulsed with an inner light. "This can't be Orion," Hope breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "And it's certainly not human." Bruce shook his head, his mind racing. "No, this predates both our species by millennia, at least. Look at the patterns. They're similar to the Kragoth's bioluminescence. There must be a connection." As they cautiously approached the structure, Bruce's foot caught on a hidden panel. A sudden surge of energy coursed through the alien edifice, causing the entire cavern to tremble. Behind them, the cave entrance sealed shut with a resounding boom. "No!" Bruce shouted, rushing back to the now solid rock face. He pressed his hands against it, searching for any weakness, but found none. Hope was frantically checking her communicator. "Our signals are completely blocked. The energy field from this structure is interfering with everything." Bruce took a deep breath, forcing himself to remain calm. "Okay, we need to focus. There has to be a way out of here, and it's probably connected to this alien technology." As they began to explore the structure more thoroughly, Bruce couldn't help but be acutely aware of Hope's presence beside him. In the confined space of the alien corridors, her shoulder occasionally brushed against his, sending a jolt of electricity through his body that had nothing to do with the strange energy field surrounding them. Meanwhile, outside the cave, Commander Zorn was growing increasingly agitated. "Where are Jenkins and Hope?" he demanded, his eyes scanning the clearing. Dr. Steele stepped forward, a look of concern on his face that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I saw them heading towards that rock formation earlier. You don't think, could Jenkins have led her into danger intentionally?" Zorn's eyes narrowed. "What are you implying, Dr. Steele?" "I'm just saying, we don't really know his true motives. He's been awfully secretive about his abilities with the Kragoths. Who knows what else he might be hiding?" The suggestion sent a ripple of unease through the expedition members. The fragile trust between humans and Orions began to fracture as suspicions grew. Back in the alien structure, Bruce and Hope had discovered a central chamber, filled with what appeared to be control panels and holographic displays. The technology was unlike anything they had ever seen, pulsing with an inner light that seemed almost alive. "Bruce, look at this," Hope called, her fingers hovering over a complex array of symbols. "These patterns, they're not just decorative. I think they're some kind of data storage system." Bruce leaned in close, his breath catching as he realized the implications. "You're right, and look how they mirror the Kragoth's bioluminescent patterns. The Kragoths aren't just native wildlife. They're living hard drives, carrying the biological and magnetic information of the entire planet." As they worked together to decipher the alien interface, Bruce found himself marveling at how perfectly their skills complemented each other. Hope's intuitive understanding of Xylox's ecosystem meshed seamlessly with his own knowledge of xenobiology and pattern recognition. Hours passed as they delved deeper into the mysteries of the alien technology. Their excitement grew with each new discovery, the initial fear of their predicament fading into the background. In a moment of shared triumph, as a particularly complex sequence of symbols finally yielded its secrets, Bruce turned to Hope. Their eyes met, and suddenly the air between them seemed charged with an electric tension. Without conscious thought, Bruce leaned in, his lips meeting Hope's in a passionate kiss. She responded with equal fervor, years of pent-up emotion pouring out in a single perfect moment. But their bliss was short-lived. A sudden surge of energy pulsed through the alien consoles, causing them to spring apart. The entire structure hummed with power, and through the walls they could hear the distant roars of Kragoths. "Oh no," Bruce breathed, his eyes widening in horror as he watched the holographic displays come to life. "We've triggered something. The Kragoths, they're activating all across the planet." Hope's fingers flew across the alien interface, trying to make sense of the cascading data. "The magnetic field, it's destabilizing. Bruce, if we don't stop this, it could tear the entire ecosystem apart." Outside, the expedition watched in awe and terror as Kragoths emerged from the crimson jungle en masse, their scales pulsing with synchronized patterns of light. The very air seemed to vibrate with unseen energy. Commander Zorn barked orders, his earlier suspicions forgotten in the face of this new crisis. "Get those shield generators up now, and someone find me a way to contact Jenkins and Hope." Dr. Steele, his face pale, stepped forward. I may have a way. There's some experimental tech we've been working on. It might be able to penetrate the magnetic interference." Zorn fixed him with a determined eyes. "Do it. Whatever our differences, we need to work together now." As the combined human and Orion team raced against time, Bruce and Hope grappled with the ancient alien technology. Sweat beaded on their brows as they fought to understand and reverse the cascade effect they had inadvertently triggered. "It's a reset mechanism," Bruce realized, his voice filled with awe and dread. "This facility was designed to periodically reboot the entire planet's ecosystem, but we've started it prematurely, and now it's spinning out of control." Hope's eyes met his, a determined glint in their depths. "Then we'll just have to find a way to control it ourselves." As they worked feverishly, Bruce couldn't help but notice how the alien system seemed to respond to their combined presence. It was almost as if— "Hope," he said slowly, a wild idea forming in his mind. "I think this system was designed to be operated by two different species working together. Look how it reacts when we both interact with it simultaneously." Hope's eyes widened as she grasped the implications. "A symbiotic interface? That's brilliant. But how do we use that to stop this catastrophe?" Before Bruce could respond, a violent tremor shook the structure. Cracks began to appear in the walls as the magnetic disturbances intensified. Time was running out. Outside, the rescue team fought against the increasingly hostile environment, unaware of the true nature of the crisis unfolding beneath their feet. Kragoths surrounded the expedition, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with an intensity that threatened to overwhelm the hastily erected shields. Inside the alien control room, Bruce and Hope stood side by side, their hands hovering over the complex interface. They exchanged a look of understanding, both knowing that what they were about to attempt could either save Xylox or doom it entirely. "Together?" Bruce asked, his voice barely a whisper. Hope nodded, her fingers intertwining with his. Together. As one, they reached out to the alien controls, ready to face whatever came next. As their fingers made contact with the alien interface, a surge of energy coursed through their bodies, causing them to gasp in unison. The console hummed to life, its intricate patterns pulsing with renewed vigor. For a moment, it seemed as though their combined efforts were having the desired effect. The tremors subsided, and the ominous rumbling that had filled the chamber quieted. However, their relief was short-lived. "It's not enough," Hope said, her voice tight with frustration. "We're slowing the cascade, but we can't stop it completely." Bruce's mind raced, analyzing the data flowing across the holographic displays. Suddenly, a pattern emerged, and his eyes widened with realization. "Hope, look at this," he said, gesturing to a complex series of interlocking symbols. "I think the system requires a third biosignature, one that represents a perfect balance between human and Orion biology." Hope's brow furrowed as she studied the display. "But how is that possible? We don't have access to—" She broke off, her gaze drawn to a previously unnoticed section of the chamber. "Bruce, what's that?" Following her line of sight, Bruce saw a cylindrical structure nestled in an alcove. Its surface was covered in the same pulsing, bioluminescent patterns as the rest of the alien technology. As they approached, a panel slid open, revealing an interior space large enough to accommodate a person. "It's some kind of genetic manipulation chamber," Bruce breathed, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his concern for their dire situation. This must be how the creators of this technology were able to interface with the planet's ecosystem. Hope's eyes met his, a mix of fear and perseverance evident in her expression. "You're thinking what I'm thinking, aren't you?" Bruce nodded grimly. "If we use this chamber, we might be able to create the hybrid biosignature we need, but the changes would likely be permanent." As they contemplated the weight of this decision, a violent tremor shook the chamber, sending debris raining down from the ceiling. The alien console emitted a high-pitched whine, its displays flashing urgent warnings. "We're out of time," Hope said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We have to do this, Bruce, for the planet, for our people." Bruce took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "Together, then?" Before Hope could respond, a loud crash echoed through the chamber. They turned to see Commander Zorn, Dr. Steele, and a small group of human and Orion scientists stumbling through a newly formed opening in the wall. "Jenkins! Hope!" Zorn called out, relief evident in his voice. "What in the name of the Galactic Council is going on here?" In rapid-fire speech, Bruce explained the situation, the alien structure's purpose, the cascading planetary reset, and their plan to stabilize the system using the genetic manipulation chamber. Zorn's expression grew increasingly grave as he listened, while Dr. Steele's eyes gleamed with barely contained excitement. "This technology, it's beyond anything we've ever encountered," Steele murmured, running his hands over the alien console. "The potential for research is—" "We don't have time for your scientific curiosity, Doctor," Zorn snapped. He turned to Bruce and Hope, his earlier suspicions replaced by grudging respect. "What do you need us to do?" "Monitor the console and keep the chamber stable," Bruce instructed, already moving towards the genetic manipulation device. "Hope and I will undergo the transformation together." As Bruce and Hope positioned themselves inside the chamber, their eyes met once more. In that moment, unspoken emotions passed between them: fear, hope, and a deep, abiding trust. "Whatever happens," Hope whispered, reaching out to grasp Bruce's hand, "I'm glad we're facing it together." The chamber door slid shut, encasing them in a cocoon of pulsing energy. Outside, Zorn and Steele worked feverishly at the alien console, guided by the frantic instructions of the human and Orion scientists. Within the chamber, Bruce and Hope felt their bodies begin to change. It started as a tingling sensation that quickly intensified into a burning ache that permeated every cell. Their vision blurred, filled with swirling patterns of light that mirrored the bioluminescence of the Kragoths. As the transformation progressed, Bruce became aware of a growing connection to Hope that went beyond the physical. Their thoughts began to merge, memories and emotions flowing between them like water. He could feel her drive, her fear, and the depth of her feelings for him, all mirrored in his own heart. Suddenly, the chamber's energy field expanded, engulfing the entire room. Zorn and Steele, caught in its grip, cried out in surprise as they too were drawn into the psychic network, forming between Bruce and Hope. In an instant, the four of them found their minds linked, suspended in a shared mental space that transcended physical boundaries. Here, they gained a profound understanding of Xylox's ecosystem and the true purpose of the alien structure: to foster cooperation and symbiosis between different species. They saw visions of the planet's past and potential futures, witnessed the intricate dance of life that connected every organism on Xylox. The Kragoths, they realized, were not just predators, but living repositories of the planet's biological and magnetic information. As the visions faded and they found themselves back in their physical bodies, Bruce and Hope emerged from the chamber. Their appearances had subtly changed. Their skin now bore faint, shimmering patterns, reminiscent of Kragoth scales, and their eyes held a newfound depth and awareness. Zorn and Steele, while physically unchanged, blinked in confusion as they adjusted to the lingering effects of the psychic link. The alien console, responding to the new hybrid biosignature, hummed with renewed purpose. The holographic displays showed the planet-wide cascade slowing, the magnetic disturbances beginning to subside. "It's working," Hope breathed, her voice carrying a new resonance that sent shivers down Bruce's spine. "We did it." As the group made their way out of the now stabilizing structure, they emerged into a world transformed. The crimson jungle of Xylox seemed more vibrant, more alive than ever before. In the distance, they could see Kragoths moving in intricate patterns, their bioluminescent displays now a harmonious part of the planet's ecosystem, rather than a chaotic disruption. Bruce and Hope, their hands intertwined, stood at the threshold of a new era, for themselves, for their species, and for the future of interstellar cooperation. The challenges ahead were numerous, but as they gazed out at the evolving landscape of Xylox, they felt a spark of hope for what was to come. Commander Zorn cleared his throat, drawing their attention. "I think," he said slowly, still processing the profound experience they had shared, "we have a lot to discuss. Discuss with the Galactic Council." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the transformed landscape. "But first, we need to get you two back to the outpost for a full medical examination." As they made their way through the evolving terrain of Xylox, Bruce and Hope marveled at the rapid changes unfolding around them. The crimson jungle had taken on new hues, with previously unseen flora sprouting from the rich soil. Alien creatures darted between the trees, their forms a perfect blend of the familiar and the extraordinary. Hope's grip on Bruce's hand tightened as a group of Kragoths emerged from the undergrowth. Instead of the aggressive behavior they had come to expect, the creatures moved with a newfound grace, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing in mesmerizing sequences. "Bruce," she whispered, "can you feel that?" He nodded, his eyes wide with wonder. The Kragoths' light displays seemed to resonate within them, conveying emotions and intentions as clear as spoken words. Without conscious effort, Bruce found himself responding, his skin shimmering with patterns that mirrored those of the alien creatures. The Kragoths chittered softly, their movements becoming more animated. Hope laughed, a sound of pure joy that sent ripples of light cascading across her skin. "They're welcoming us," she translated, her voice filled with awe. "They recognize us as part of Xylox now." As they continued their journey, Commander Zorn and Dr. Steele observed the interaction with a mix of fascination and unease. The psychic link they had briefly shared in the alien structure lingered, allowing them to sense the profound connection forming between the hybrid couple and their new environment. Upon reaching the Orion research outpost, they were met with a flurry of activity. Human and Orion personnel alike stopped in their tracks, staring at Bruce and Hope with a potent mix of curiosity and apprehension. Dr. Zala, the lead Orion scientist, rushed forward, her multiple eyes blinking rapidly as she took in the sight of the transformed humans. "Fascinating," she breathed, her tentacles twitching with excitement. "We must begin tests immediately. The implications of this transformation are staggering." In the medical bay, Bruce and Hope underwent a battery of examinations. Dr. Zala's instruments hummed and whirred, collecting data on their altered physiology. As the test progressed, the extent of their transformation became clear. "Your muscular density has increased by 40%, Dr. Zala announced, her voice tinged with awe. "And your sensory perception, it's off the charts. You're picking up wavelengths of light and sound that neither humans nor Orions can detect naturally." Bruce flexed his hand, marveling at the newfound strength coursing through his body. "What about our ability to communicate with the wildlife?" Dr. Zala's tentacles rippled with excitement. "It appears that your bioluminescent patterns are capable of transmitting and receiving complex information. You've essentially developed a new form of language, one that bridges the gap between multiple species." As the implications of their transformation sank in, a commotion outside the medical bay drew their attention. Commander Zorn's voice could be heard, raised in argument with an unfamiliar speaker. "We have a situation," Zorn announced as he entered the room, his face grim. "Word of what happened here has reached both human and Orion High Command. They're sending a joint task force to investigate." Hope's brow furrowed with concern. How long do we have? They'll be here within the day, Zorn replied. Admiral Cora is leading the Orion contingent, and General Thompson is representing Earth. We need to be prepared for intense scrutiny. The hours that followed were a whirlwind of preparation and debriefing. Bruce and Hope struggled to articulate the profound changes they had undergone, while Zorn and Steele worked to compile a comprehensive report on the events at the alien structure. As the Orion transport ship carrying Admiral Cora and General Thompson touched down outside the research outpost, a tense silence fell over the assembled personnel. Bruce and Hope stood at the forefront, their altered appearance drawing all eyes to them. Admiral Cora, a towering Orion with battle-scarred carapace, was the first to emerge from the ship. Her multiple eyes narrowed as she took in the scene before her. General Thompson followed close behind, his weathered face set in a mask of careful neutrality. Commander Zorn, Admiral Cora's voice boomed across the landing pad, you will explain to me exactly what has transpired on this planet, starting with the condition of these two humans. As Zorn began his report, Bruce felt Hope's hand slip into his. Their fingers intertwined, a small gesture of comfort in the face of the uncertain future that lay ahead. Whatever challenges they would face them together, as humans, as Orions, and as something entirely new. The interrogation that followed was grueling. Admiral Cora and General Thompson subjected Bruce and Hope to hours of intense questioning, probing every aspect of their transformation and their newfound abilities. Dr. Zala presented her findings, her enthusiasm for the scientific implications terrifying. Show us, General Thompson demanded, his eyes fixed on the hybrid couple. Demonstrate these abilities you claim to possess. Bruce and Hope exchanged a glance, a silent communication passing between them. With a nod, they stepped forward, their skin beginning to shimmer with intricate patterns of light. The assembled group watched in amazement as a nearby cluster of xyloxian plants responded, their bioluminescent fronds pulsing in harmony with the hybrid couple. Suddenly, a kragoth burst from the underbrush, its massive form causing several of the Orion guards to raise their weapons. But before anyone could react, Bruce and Hope's skin flared with a complex sequence of lights. The kragoth skidded to a halt, its own bioluminescent patterns shifting in response. To the astonishment of all present, the kragoth lowered itself to the ground, its previously aggressive posture melting into one of calm submission. Hope approached the creature, her hand outstretched. The kragoth allowed her to touch its scaly hide, a soft trill escaping its throat. Remarkable, Admiral Cora murmured, her earlier skepticism giving way to grudging respect. As the demonstration concluded, General Thompson cleared his throat. While your abilities are indeed impressive, they also represent a potential threat to the established order. We need to understand the full extent of what's happened here. Agreed, Admiral Cora nodded. We will conduct a full expedition to this alien structure. Perhaps there we can find answers to the questions that plague us. As preparations for the expedition began, Bruce and Hope found themselves at the center of a maelstrom of activity. Scientists clamored for more tests. Security personnel eyed them with suspicion, and the air buzzed with speculation about the implications of their transformation. Amidst the chaos, Bruce pulled Hope aside, his eyes searching hers. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his fingers tracing the faint, shimmering patterns on her skin. Hope leaned into his touch, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'm scared," she admitted, "but also exhilarated. Everything feels so different now, so much more alive. And being here with you, like this." She trailed off, her eyes conveying what words could not. Bruce nodded, understanding perfectly. Their shared experience had forged a bond between them that transcended the physical changes they had undergone. As they stood there on the cusp of a journey that would shape the future of human-Orion relations, and perhaps the galaxy itself, they drew strength from each other. The expedition into the heart of Xylox's transformed landscape was about to begin, and with it, a new chapter in the story of two species learning to coexist in a universe full of wonders and dangers. Bruce and Hope, caught between two worlds and yet belonging to both, would lead the way into the unknown. Unknown. As the expedition prepared to depart, Bruce and Hope found themselves overwhelmed by the magnitude of what lay ahead. They exchanged a meaningful glance, silently agreeing to step away from the bustling activity for a moment of reflection. Hand in hand, they made their way to a secluded area of the alien structure, their footsteps echoing softly in the cavernous space. The walls hummed with a faint, otherworldly energy, responding to their hybrid biosignatures. "Bruce?" Hope whispered, her voice tinged with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "Are we ready for this? Everything's happening so fast." Bruce pulled her close, his skin shimmering with patterns that reflected his own conflicted emotions. "I don't know if we're ready," he admitted, "but I know we're in this together." As they stood there wrapped in each other's arms, the air around them seemed to pulse with potential. Their moment of intimacy, however, was abruptly shattered by a violent tremor that shook the entire facility. Startled, they broke apart, their eyes wide with alarm. "What was that?" Bruce exclaimed, steadying himself against a nearby console. Before Hope could respond, another tremor rocked the structure, stronger than the first. Without hesitation, they sprinted back towards the main chamber, their enhanced physiology allowing them to move with incredible speed and agility. As they burst into the central hub, they were met with a scene of chaos. Admiral Cora and General Thompson stood at the center of the room, their faces contorted with anger as they grappled with each other. The tremors, it seemed, had escalated the already tense situation into a physical confrontation. "You humans are too reckless," Admiral Cora bellowed, her multiple eyes flashing with fury. "Your insistence on pushing boundaries will doom us all." General Thompson, his face red with exertion, shot back. "And your overcaution will leave us defenseless against whatever's causing these quakes." As Bruce and Hope watched in horror, the alien technology surrounding them suddenly sprang to life. Brilliant energy fields erupted from the floor and ceiling, forming translucent barriers that separated the human and Orion groups. "What's happening?" Dr. Zala cried out, her tentacles writhing in agitation as she pressed against the energy field. Bruce and Hope exchanged a look of realization. "The structure," Hope breathed, "it's responding to the conflict. It's forcing us to cooperate." Acting on instinct, Bruce reached out to touch one of the nearby consoles. As his fingers made contact, a flood of information rushed through his mind. Hope joined him, their hybrid abilities allowing them to interface directly with the alien system. "It's a failsafe," Bruce explained, his voice filled with awe. "The ancient creators built in measures to prevent violence within the structure." As they delved deeper into the alien database, a more urgent revelation came to light. Hope's eyes widened as she processed the information. "The tremors," she gasped. "They're not natural. There's something massive moving beneath the surface of the planet." Bruce nodded, his expression grim. "A Kragoth," he confirmed, "but unlike any we've ever seen. It's been in hibernation for centuries, maybe even millennia." Their connection to the alien system provided them with a flood of data about the ancient creature. Its size dwarfed any Kragoth they had encountered, and its role in Xylox's ecosystem was far more crucial than they had imagined. "It's waking up," Hope whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of fear and wonder. "And its movement is causing widespread destruction across the planet." As if to emphasize her words, another violent tremor shook the structure. Alarms began to blare throughout the facility, warning of the imminent danger. Bruce and Hope disengaged from the console, their minds reeling from the influx of information. They turned to face the separated groups, who had fallen silent in the face of this new threat. "Listen to me," Bruce called out, his voice carrying a newfound authority. "We don't have time for this infighting. There's an ancient Kragoth awakening, and it's threatening everything on this planet, including our outposts and the new ecosystem we've helped create." Hope stepped forward, her skin pulsing with urgent patterns. "The only way we can hope to survive this and save Xylox is by working together. Humans, Orions, and hybrids. We all have a role to play." The gravity of the situation seemed to sink in for both Admiral Cora and General Thompson. They looked at each other, the anger in their eyes giving way to a grudging respect. Commander Zorn and Dr. Steele, drawing upon the remnants of their psychic link from the earlier shared experience, moved to calm the tensions between the two leaders. Their empathic abilities, while not as pronounced as Bruce and Hope's, proved crucial in fostering a sense of unity. As the energy fields dissipated, Bruce and Hope laid out their daring plan. We'll attempt to communicate with the ancient Kragoth, Bruce explained. Our hybrid abilities might allow us to establish a connection similar to what we experienced in the genetic manipulation chamber. Hope continued. Meanwhile, we need the combined forces of humans and Orions to evacuate the threatened areas and work on stabilizing the planet's magnetic field. The Kragoth's movement is disrupting it, and if we don't act fast, the consequences could be catastrophic. Admiral Cora and General Thompson, their earlier hostility set aside in the face of this greater threat, began issuing orders to their respective teams. The alien structure buzzed with activity as humans and Orions worked side by side, preparing for the monumental task ahead. As the teams mobilized, a deafening roar echoed through the facility, accompanied by the most violent tremor yet. Bruce and Hope rushed to the structure's entrance, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. There, emerging from the ground near the alien structure, was the colossal form of the ancient Kragoth. Its size beggared belief, dwarfing the surrounding crimson jungle. Its scales, worn by the passage of countless years, still shimmered with faint bioluminescent patterns. Bruce squeezed Hope's hand, drawing strength from her presence. "Ready?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the rumbling of the earth. Hope nodded, her eyes fixed on the titanic creature before them. "Together," she replied. With that, they stepped forward, their bodies beginning to pulse with intricate patterns of light. As they approached the ancient Kragoth, they drew upon everything they had learned about the creatures and their newfound connection to Xylox's ecosystem. The massive Kragoth, initially hostile, turned its attention to the tiny figures approaching it. Bruce and Hope, their hearts racing but their tenacity unshaken, began their attempt to communicate with the colossus that held the fate of Xylox in its ancient, powerful form.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.